everybody. I'm Guy Kawasaki, and welcome to my Behind the Podcast.
Oh, Guy got a lot more attractive, I'd say, than he's not watching this, is he? No.
He's probably watching. Hi, if you're watching. So, hey, everybody. I'm sure you probably noticed that I am really not Guy Kawasaki. I am Peg Fitzpatrick, and I'm joined by, I'm so bad at on camera, by Jeff Sieh. And we actually are the people who are behind the podcast. So, the Behind the Podcast is actually featuring the people who are behind Guy working on the podcast. Mr. Kawasaki is taking a vacation. So we are here today to talk to you about this week's episode with Ronnie Lott. And Jeff and I are renowned sports experts.
That's right.
But all we talk about is sports.
That's right. So, but before we get started, we want to let you guys know that, as always, this show is sponsored by the wonderful people over at Restream, Restream.io. There are what allow us to actually go live to over 30 different places. We're actually going live to like 5 or 6, but it's really cool because we can bring up comments from people, and we know that Zaid is from LinkedIn, and we've got some other people showing up from there because we can pull in comments from everybody, and every platform. So it's very, very cool. Make sure you guys go check them out. They are a sponsor of this live stream. Restream.io. Amazing people, amazing service. So little
really
plug
is.
there. Yeah.
Such a great team over there too.
Yeah.
And so if you guys have questions or you want to say hi to us, drop it anywhere, any platform that you're on. Just tell us hi. Jeff will be popping up the questions. Just so you know, when you watch this show every week, Jeff is the one who guys always saying, "Hey, Jeff, pull that thing up." That's Jeff.
That is me. Yeah, the strange bearded man behind the stream. Yeah, so a lot of people are going, "Hey, where's Guy?" Well, Guy is on vacation. We will probably have to say that more than once during the show today. But we wanted to come on and talk about this amazing. This was actually both Peg and I. We enjoy sports. We're not sports nuts, but this was an amazing podcast just on its own with Ronnie Lott.
Really?
Yeah. If you probably recognize that name. I grew up in around Kansas City, and when he played for Kansas City, that was a big deal. But this is one you definitely do not want to miss because there are a lot of great lessons. Ronnie name drops like crazy during this episode of really famous sports people. So it's very, very cool.
But I really appreciated the fact that he just looks at professional athletes or Olympic athletes just at that level. Like, he doesn't just talk about football. He talks about Brady Chastain, who's a previous guest, who's, world-class soccer, Olympic gold medal soccer. He talked about Christy Yamaguchi, and he's, of course, best buddies with Joe Namath. So if you don't know Ronnie Lott, he was playing at the same time he played with Joe Namath, who was, depends on your age, if you remember them playing, but Joe Namath was he was everywhere. He was really one of the first, I would say, sports people that was just all over the TV, don't you think?
Yeah,
he just had so many brand deals.
The fur coat, yeah. So, and the thing also, that Marcus Allen, who is another one of people who I used to watch a lot. He talks about him a lot during the show. But let's do our icebreaker question. We've got by the way, we've got a lot of people coming in. Claudia says hello. We've got people from Dubai. Ansar says hello. She's from Brazil. Hello. Claudia is. So we've got tons of people here with the show today.
Hola,
yes,
Brazil.
Guy is on vacation. We are. Since it's a sports show, we are the second string behind the scenes. So the second string, third or fourth or fifth. Yeah, sports. Exactly. But make sure you guys go check out. Yeah, I was going to say, make sure you guys go check it out. You can go get from your favorite podcast player. If you go to remarkablepeople.com, you can find this podcast for this week. But also, there's a huge library of amazing, remarkable people that Guy has had on the show. So you guys want to go, make sure to go to remarkablepeople.com and check that out.
Mm-hmm. So we're gonna do the icebreaker.
Yeah. So
you guys need to answer.
This is for you guys. Who is your biggest sports icon? So, like, it doesn't have to be football because Ronnie talks about football a lot in this episode. But what is your biggest sports icon? So, Peg, who is your biggest sports icon? Would you say?
I would say mine are like Olympic athletes. One of the first years that I remember was watching Dorothy Hamill. I always like the ice skating. I like the pair skating and the women's figure skating. So that the Olympic winter sports were always the big things for me. my sister was into gymnastics. So the year Nadia Comaneci got perfect tens, and she was like the first Olympic athlete to get perfect tens. So I really do look up to Olympic athletes because I think the amount of work that it takes to get there is crazy. And obviously the same for professional sports. You know, you go, it's hard to be at the top of any sport. So I would say Olympic athletes for me. How about you?
Yeah, I think Olympic athletes for sure. I wanted to bring up this really quick, but make sure you answer who's this is. I think we did say the name wrong. We said Terry goes, I think you mean Joe Montana. Yes, because they played on the 49ers
yes.
together. Yes,
sorry.
so Joe Montana. Yeah, so he
Thanks,
was
Terry.
he was a great, and I liked it too because I told you before that I'm a Chiefs fan, so he played for them at kind of the end of his career. But yeah, so gosh. You know, it sounds, because everybody would say him, but it was right when I was watching it and when I was a kid. But, you know, Michael Jordan, the stuff he would do, and I would just, it was in the news all the time. And so he would probably be one I like to watch. Gosh, there's so many of them.
I actually saw Michael Jordan play when I lived in Detroit. And I used to work for Merrill Lynch. We used to get tickets to everything, concerts, sports. So I used to go to the basketball games sometimes. But my dad was a huge baseball fan. So for me, it was baseball. And I used to go to see the Tigers games with my dad. And he was a huge Yankees fan, but he was a Tigers fan too. And then he would bring me and we would go. So I actually went to the World Series the year that Detroit won.
Oh, wow. That's pretty cool
So
that you got to go.
I love baseball, but Rich doesn't like my husband doesn't like baseball, so he never watches it. But I was like pre-trained to be like a really great baseball spouse and watch all the games, but he likes college basketball.
That's cool. Yeah, so my son's a sports nut, and so he's really gotten me into it. And so he's a big Cowboys fan because we're in Texas. And so he, you know, Tony Romo was his big hero growing up, and now that he's doing the commentary, we love to watch him. I just think he's a cool guy too. So Tony Romo. So we've got some answers. Matthew says Michael Jordan. Good pick, Matthew. Mary Lou Retna. Yep, she was a great. Yeah, I remember seeing her. She was on the Wheaties box forever. That's how because I remember her on there all the time. Ayrton Senna, I don't know who that is, but we've got a Gordon Fitt.
Probably a soccer player maybe that we know.
So yeah, Bobby Orr. So this from YouTube. Yeah, so we've got that. A lot of people have looked up to sports icons for a long time. But let's ask another question. Is like, who's your favorite football player? So we asked who your sports icon. We got Michael Jordan. We got a bunch of other answers. So football player and American football for all the people who are watching. American football. Who's your favorite football player? Man, there. You know, and Ronnie mentioned so many good ones during the podcast. Gosh, Marcus Allen. Gosh, you know, you think about Mean Joe Green. You think about some of the other big ones. I don't know who my favorite one was. And like the Refrigerator Perry. Remember that whole with the Chicago Bears that's when I was really watching them. So there's so many good ones.
We lived in Rochester, so the Buffalo Bills were my husband's like home team that he loved. He would watch Buffalo Bills. So he does not enjoy the Patriots, and that's who. I mean, New England is just crazy Patriots fans. So, are you guys Tom Brady fans or not? He's a very controversial player, and it's interesting because Ronnie talks about him on the podcast because Guy asks him what he thinks about it, and he gave a very nice answer. But people feel split about that. Tom Brady.
Yeah, that's a good one. So Tom Brady. There's let me pull this down here, but yeah. So we've got John saying Tom Brady. That was his favorite American football player. Got some other ones here too, but yeah. So there's so many to pick from, and you know, I guess it does depend on the team that like you grew up with, and like my son, like I said, it was Tony Romo. He would just die if he got to meet him because he loved him so much. So
before your son's time, though, the Dallas Cowboys were the team before the Patriots were dominated.
They'd always call it the Americans team, and I'm just like, that's a little. They're not my favorite, and everyone here is a Dallas football nut, and so the Cowboys, and so I did get to go see a game, with my son, and that was like he was going to, that was his big thing to do. So it was a lot of fun to go see that. So
It really is. Professional sports are so fun. If you get to go, to baseball, any of those are just, I've obviously seen more baseball games, but I did see quite a bit of football when I was in Detroit just for something to do.
So to me, a pro football game is like, it's like an event. I like to go to the baseball games because they're just relaxing to me. Like I like to go to the Texas Rangers. They have a great stadium. Going there and chilling and hanging out. I got to go to the Seattle. I'm not the the San Diego when they were there. I went to go
Padres?
see it. And so got to see them. And so it was. I just like it because it's relaxing. When I go see baseball, it's relaxing. So Terry goes, Joe Namath. He was my favorite football player when I was a kid in New York. Yeah. Yeah, and I agree, John. He goes, Tony Romo is also an amazing host. Makes the game so much more enjoyable. Great insights in real time. Yeah, because he was that quarterback, and he can. It's so funny, and they make fun of him because he reads the plays and tells you what's going to happen before it does. But his excitement is just. I think I just love him because he reminds me of how excited John Madden used to get, where he could just barely contain himself, when as announcing things. Tony kind of has some of that feel as well. So I would agree, John, that Tony Romo is also amazing a person. So let's go to our next question, which we got to explain this, which you cut off the tip of your finger in order to not miss the start of a season. So Ronnie talks about this in the podcast. So Peg, why don't you tell a little bit of the story? Because he smashed his finger. What it is, he smashed his finger between, and he talks about it in the podcast. So make sure you guys go to remarkablepeople.com and check it out. But
we don't want to spoil the story because it is a good one. But he had to do something drastic so he could start the season. And he was, and most people know what it is. If you're a football fan, and he gets asked about it all the time. But would you do something extreme to get into the game? Would you cut off the tip of your finger so you could get in that game?
So you could play. I mean, so growing up, there was a guy who I knew who went to actually our church, and he played for the Bears back in the day when they used leather helmets. I mean, and he would tell stories of that. They would go in, they would break their nose or they'd break their fingers, and they just tape it up and go back in the game. I mean, it was. I mean, he didn't know his name, but he was a great guy. No, I'm just. But I mean, that's a lot of stuff, and so, like our next question is like, have you had injuries like that you had as a kid that affected your health and later in life? And this could be devastating, and Ronnie even talked a little bit about this in the podcast because of all the controversy now with the head injuries and the constant concussions and the new helmets they're developing. And my son, like his senior year, was playing football and he tore his ACL and was out, and he was devastated. That was his senior year, and he was just, and he was a sports guy, and it just devastated him. I broke my foot I don't think I told you this, Peg, but when I was in junior high, I was playing football, and I broke my foot, and that was the last time I was done. I mean, it was like a big cat. I was a cheerleader in junior high. There you go.
Then I didn't make the high school team because I could not do the cartwheel into a split.
That's pretty impressive.
Sad for me.
I couldn't do that at all.
But you can't. There's so many different things. Like my daughter did. All three of my kids actually did tons of dance, and one of my daughters has like hip injuries still because she was in a hip hop class and she literally like popped her hip, and it's still like, even just years of dance class can. So
here's the question: do you think the lessons learned, like in the dance class or like even my son's sports, is worth the injury that they got? I mean, that's a good question. As I know, you have to wrestle with that as a parent,
right?
And we've had some like Brandy Chastain talks about her kids and letting them do stuff in a previous episode of this podcast, but you have to balance that as a parent, and it's. Right. It can affect your health later on.
I think any of those things where you're working as a team, whether it's theater or dance or sports, you do learn so much. You don't want it to be, like some of the stories that you've heard about gymnastics or any of the other Olympic sports where, people are treated poorly or abuse is happening or any of those things. But it is you do learn a lot by being part of a team that you don't learn when you're working on things all by yourself. So I would probably say, even though you did football through junior high, you probably learned a lot of things. You got to show up on time. You got to work hard. If you want to play in the game, there's just, you learn a ton, whether it's like handing off the plays that you have to learn.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it is worth it. I mean, you can get injured doing things, but what's the alternative? You don't do anything that you're getting in there and I think that's part of what makes school great for kids, whether it's junior high or high school, is being a part of teams and clubs, because that's really the social aspect where you do things with other people. And I think that probably most people who do sports and stay with it all the way through, learned tons of things. And then if you go to, and sometimes it helps get you a scholarship,
Right.
or it gets you a path in life, helps you make connections. So I think it probably is worth that you might get injured. I mean, you try to keep it as safe, everybody as safe as possible. And obviously with football, they're improving the equipment because what they had isn't sufficient. Yeah. And that sucks about the head injuries.
Yeah. So I would agree, because I think even my son, I mean, yeah, he got injured in his senior year, but he learned a ton of stuff. I mean, as a father, it was really hard to watch because I knew what he wanted to do. But he's right now pursuing kinesiology at college, and he wants to do sports medicine and all that stuff. So it's a part of his DNA. So taking that away from him would have been, devastating for him. It was enough devastation senior year, but lucky he got to play a little bit more on basketball. But so let's see. Terry says this. Terry goes, I have a bunch of friends that played basketball in high school and college now have total knee replacements because of the hardwood floors. Yeah, I mean, it's tough. Yeah, so I think that, you have to balance all that stuff. And I'm glad that things are getting safer. Even in the high school level, I saw them really watching out for the kids. I mean, you get thrown out of games now if you target somebody with a wrong kind of tackle on football games, and even in high school. So they're really watching out for them, which I think is really, really cool. So, and even if you're not a sports nut, you guys need to really go check out this podcast at remarkablepeople.com, because there's a ton of things. Ronnie was really eloquent and really the way he brought things and how he wanted to give back to what he's doing in his community is it's just a really inspirational podcast. So even if you're not a sports nut, it was one of my favorite ones to listen to. I know I have a quote in here quick that he did.
He's one of those athletes that just really gets the commitment level of it. He compares it to the Navy SEAL mentality of being all in. Oh, and there it is. It was like, how did I know that?
Yeah.
But I think that is really important, because that is one of the things that sets professional athletes, Olympic athletes, anyone who's performing well in sales or marketing, or they can be translated to anything. But have you ever used any of the techniques that the Navy SEALs use, like the positive thinking and the always be prepared, and it's
I
like
think
next
Ronnie,
level Boy Scouting.
Right. Well, I remember, there's a lot of the professional ones who have gone on and been entrepreneurs. Like he even mentioned, he owns a couple of car dealerships that he has in. I'm not sure where he is. He in California? He's in California, isn't he?
I think he's right in Silicon Valley.
And some other stuff that he's helped start up. So he's taken some of those, and he explains it in the podcast, some of the lessons he learned, and from the coaches. And he even mentioned his roommate, I think it was Marcus Allen, quite a bit, of how he would watch them and emulate some of the things they would do, and he would apply those to later on his business stuff. So I thought it's just a really great one. So do us a favor, if you haven't done this yet, but on the podcast, if you have enjoyed the podcast, if you would leave Guy a rating and review, man, that really helps the podcast out, and share it with your social friends, because there are so many good guests that we've had on the show, and we've got, because we're behind the scenes and we kind of know, there's a ton of really cool ones coming up that you guys aren't going to want to miss. But if you would leave a rating and review, that really does help out the podcast. So
it does. So here's one quote from Ronnie. He said, in sports or in life, we all have moments where we do something to make sacrifices because we understand that's what we do in life. We have to make sacrifices. So that's just one little, he just really was throwing out like nuggets of wisdom. I felt like, I think that's a term that gets used a lot, but with Ronnie, it was really
yeah, there's a
true.
lot.
You know, he just, the way he was explaining it on how, you know, he was successful, and he talked a lot about the teamwork and the people that he played with, and you know, it's like the relationship and the networking and the communication, and it really is a great episode. Even if you're not a sports fan, you'll definitely enjoy it. And I don't know if you guys knew this, and I tried to get pictures, but I didn't get any from Guy. But Guy actually played high school football,
Right.
so he's a big sports fan. I'm sure everybody knows that he played hockey for years, but when he was young, he played football. He was a jock. Not surprising, since he's now
surfing all the time
in his 60s, which is
amazing.
You know,
right.
Yeah.
So the last question. So and Peg talked about a little bit about this, but Ronnie talked about this exhausting everything mentality and how important that is. So in your business, have you tried to exhaust everything in your life? I mean, sometimes exhaustion has a negative connotation, like it's like you've done it and
like
you can't do it anymore.
Culture.
Like I've exhausted all my options.
About the hustle culture.
I gotta get a real job. I've exhausted all my options here. But it also can be like putting everything you've got into it, and that's what he was talking about. Like, I'm going to put all I am into this entrepreneurial journey, and at the end, if it doesn't work out, I know that I put everything I can into it. So I think
leaving all the cards on the table.
Right, exactly. And he had some great points in the podcast about that as well. So yeah. How about you? Have you exhausted everything? I'm exhausted, but I'm not exhausted everything.
I think I do that with work. I mean, I definitely try to keeping up on all the things in social media is a challenge. Like, you have to constantly catch the updates and test the updates and try things, and things change constantly. So I feel like I have to do that to be successful in my job. I feel like you definitely can't just do the same thing all the time without tweaking your plans and changing. So that forces you to constantly be upping your game to stay in it, I think, at all. Don't you think so? Yeah.
And so I think that, at least I try to do that. Sometimes we all need breaks. We all need to recharge. But I think, and I know Peg does this because I see her, but leaving all of the cards on the table, leaving no stone unturned, continue to learn. I think one of the ways to, make sure you're putting all the cards on the table is that you're constantly learning. And like for us, social media and marketing and podcasting is always changing, and there's new things coming out. Like Facebook is just rolling out with new podcasting options, and Guy has that rolling out for his channel soon. So, I mean, all that stuff we have to keep on top of, and that's always, if you do not like learning, then you're probably not gonna, you haven't exhausted everything, I guess. So,
right. I think every job is like that, though. And so, I think most jobs now, you really have to upskill to keep moving forward. Everything is online. I think that happened for a lot of people during the pandemic, where they were in the office, they weren't used to using technology as much, but anybody who had to figure out how to work at home had to figure out how to do cameras and lighting and, all the things that, how to do Zoom and, just be more digitally better at communication, which is, it takes organization. We use a bunch of tools on our team. We use Trello. We use, we sometimes text and email. We have something called Privy that we use. So yeah, I think exhausting. I'd love to know what people, did anybody answer the exhaust question? Does anybody feel like they really
put everything
throw it all out there for their job? Right. Yeah.
And it can be exhausting doing that, but I think the payoffs at the end are, one, what was my dad always would say, part of it's the job well done, knowing that you did the job and did it well done. So, so this is great. Terry says, I try much harder today, being a better grandfather than I was a father. Yeah, right. I'm not there yet, but yeah, I hear that. I know my dad has said something similar with my kids. Like, he really enjoys them probably more than he ever did me. So yeah, Peg, what about you? I know you're You know, you've got grandkids.
I never talk about that, but yes.
But
I think you do. I think the thing when you're a grandparent, it's kind of like, it's not like a do-over, but it's like a really good rerun of your favorite show.
right.
You know, so you get to like enjoy some of the same things with like this next generation. It's, you know, like reading the same book or talking, you know, doing the same kind of things. And it is, you do try to do, and I try to like live up to be as good. Like I had awesome grandmas. Like I try to be as good as my grandmas. Like I'm always like, good. I hope I'm like giving back as much as my nana, you know, like my nana did, or, you know, my grandma Gail was just like the sweetest. And, you know, she just was like everyone called her grandma, like everyone everywhere called her grandma because she was just a grandma. She just, you know, she treated everybody the same and she was just so kind. And, you know, I just think of like, am I making that kind of impact? Like it sort of feels like a lot of responsibility, but a good responsibility.
Right. And I think
grandparents, you have a lot different relationship than parents.
Yeah. And so Stephen says this, hopefully one never stops learning throughout life. I agree with you, Stephen. The thing is, I think some people do want to stop or they want to give up. And I appreciate you watching over on YouTube, but yeah, I see some people even like, retire and then they're done. They're like, you know, and they just watch their soaps and stuff. And I'm like, I hope I never
feel like you're done at that point. Mentally, you got to keep doing new things. I just read an article about how the brain works. They're always studying how the brain works. And one of them is to keep your brain active, like doing crossword puzzles or reading or, you know, you really just got to keep, you know, doing new things and learning new things and, keep your brain going.
And you got to think,
but I don't think our generation's going to get to retire, so you don't have to worry about it.
Right. But even like for, let's say Guy, we've talked about him. You know, he's written 12 books. He's done all this different stuff. 15 books. Was it really? We need to update some stuff then. But the one of the things is, and you know, he's only been podcasting for what, just over a year. I mean, that was something. It was something totally new that he had to learn how to do. And, you know, technology has changed. You know, we've talked about we use Restream to go live for everything. We use Descript, which is a great tool that we use to actually produce the podcast. We take that to OB Audition where we do the sound design. We upload it to a podcasting platform. I mean, and then Peg takes it and chops it up and shares it everywhere. I mean, there's a lot of moving pieces, but this was all new to him. And so I think that continuing to grow, and I hope that you know, when I get to be, that sounds bad. Hope he's not listening, but I hope to be, when I keep going, that I continue to do what Guy is doing and learning new things, trying and developing new skills and all that kind of stuff. So I think, yeah, pretty awesome.
Oh, he's a really good example of that because he was also a very early blogger.
Yeah.
He was blogging before anybody was blogging. And so he'll sometimes be listed as like one of the best bloggers. And he's like, I don't even write anything on my blog anymore. But people remember that he was one of the original bloggers. And, you know, that's how he built up his social platforms, by getting onto things early, like Twitter and Google Plus, which obviously, you know, that was another one where we dove in there. So some of the things, sometimes you have lessons that carry over to other things. And then sometimes it's, you know, you got to start over with learning all the new tools for podcasting or whatever the new thing is. Have you guys tried anything new lately? I'd love to know if anybody's tried anything new. I mean, look at Guy even trying surfing in his 60s. That's pretty amazing.
That is cool. So Anthony says this. He goes, every job I joined, I had to learn something new. I thought I was retired last year, but I started working again a month ago so that I can still keep learning. That is amazing. That is a great attitude, Anthony. So, what type of job or skill were you wanting to learn that you joined again? So I think that's pretty cool. So, and Manuel says, good podcast. It is a good podcast. So make sure you guys go check out this new one with Ronnie Lott over at remarkablepeople.com. You can download it to your favorite podcast player. And if you would be so kind to leave us a rating and review for that podcast, Guy would appreciate it very much.
Or you can just ask Siri. You can say, hey Siri, play Guy Kawasaki's Remarkable People podcast with Ronnie Lott.
You can also ask the Amazon assistant that I will not say because it will set off everything. So, yeah.
Alexa, and Guy did it last time. Toilet paper.
I have it. I hit my earphone, so I'm glad you wouldn't do that because it would do
Darn
that.
it.
By the way, yeah, sorry. So with that, I think we are pretty much done with the podcast. But I want you guys to make sure you guys go over there and do listen to it. Let us know what you think about Ronnie Lott's episode. Guy always answers his emails, so and share it out on socials. Do whatever you would like to do, and let us know what you think. And we do have a special message from Guy that we are going to play right now. Are you ready for it? Are you ready?
Yes.
All right,
Thanks
I'm
for
Jeff
watching,
Sieh, and
everyone.
this is Peg Fitzpatrick, and we'll see you next time. Bye, guys.
Hey there, it's Guy Kawasaki. As you heard, I'm on vacation. I'm completely, utterly sure that Peg and Jeff are doing a great job. In fact, they're probably doing a better job at being me than I am at being me. So, I'm going to find out that they have more views and comments than I do. Hallelujah. Life is not a zero-sum game. But anyway, even on vacation, I'm going to tell you that this show is sponsored by Restream. It is the way to get high-definition audio and video onto 30 platforms at once. Wrap your mind around that. That's how we do it to multiple platforms. Honestly, I didn't even know there were 30 platforms. So anyway, this telecast live is sponsored by Restream. Aloha. Thank you.